I still remember the exact moment everything changed. It was a quiet Saturday afternoon, the kind where nothing ever seems to happen. I was visiting my aunt, just planning to relax, maybe sip some coffee and catch up on family gossip. Her dog, Max, was lounging on the porch like usual. You know the type, big, lazy, and always acting like the world owes him a treat. No one ever expected much from Max, especially not anything heroic or shocking. But that day, Max did something so unbelievable, it left every single one of us speechless. I'm not exaggerating when I say it felt like something out of a movie. Now, before I get ahead of myself, let me give you little background. My aunt lives out in a quiet suburban neighborhood and nothing fancy, just rows of houses and friendly neighbors. Max had been part of the family for years. He wasn't trained for anything special. In fact, most of us joked that he was more of a couch potato than a guard dog. He'd bark at squirrels, sure, but run at the first sign of real trouble. He was lovable, goofy, and honestly, a little clumsy. The kind of dog you'd expect to knock over a lamp chasing his own tail, and not the kind to make headlines. That's why what happened next was so hard to believe. Everything started when my aunt asked me to take out the trash. Nothing dramatic, just a quick chore before dinner. I was walking back inside when I heard Max growl, a low, serious growl I had never heard from him before. I turned around and saw him standing stiff, ears up, eyes locked on something across the street. I followed his gaze, and that's when I saw it. At first, I didn't even know what I was looking at. It was fast, too fast. Something or Samionia was moving toward a little girl riding her bike. Her parents weren't nearby. It all happened in a flash, and for a second, I just froze. But Max didn't. Before I could even react, he was off the porch, charging full speed across the street like his life depended on it. I had never seen him move like that, not ever. The neighbors, a couple of people out watering their lawns, even the mailman, all turned to watch. It was like time slowed down for everyone except Max. And what he did next, a broken bar, well, let's just say no one expected that from a dog who once got stuck in a laundry basket. I won't spoil what happened just yet, but trust me, it's the kind of moment that makes you believe animals know way more than we give them credit for. Max went from the lazy family pet to something entirely different that day. And what he pulled off, it might just change how you see dogs forever. Stick around, because the real twist is still coming, and believe me, you won't want to miss it. Max reached the street just as the thing came into full view. It wasn't a persona, at least. Not exactly. It looked like a large shadow darting behind the bushes, moving fast and low. The little girl on the bike was still pedaling, completely unaware of what was coming. I yelled, but my voice felt small, drowned out by the pounding of my heart. The neighbors gasped, and someone dropped their watering can. Everything about that moment felt strangely like the air had thickened and time was playing tricks on us. Max didn't slow down. He charged straight across, his paws kicking up bits of gravel, barking louder now, sharper like a warning. The little girl's front tire wobbled just as Max got in front of her. He barked again, lunging toward the bushes, and suddenly, there was a loud rustling. Whatever had been creeping closer vanished back into the trees. Just like that, gone. No one. He got a clear look, just movement and noisy, and Max standing guard between the girl and whatever that thing had been. The girl, maybe 7 or 8 years old, skidded to a stop. She looked scared, like she knew something had almost happened but couldn't say what. Her parents came running from down the street, shouting her name. They scooped her up, asking if she was okay. She nodded, still shaking. And Max? He just sat there, panting, looking back at us like he was asking if someone else had seen what he saw. My aunt came outside at that point, confused by the sudden chaos. I explained as best I could, but it was hard to put into words. No one could describe what exactly Max had chased off. Some neighbors said it was a coyote. Others thought maybe it was a big stray dog. But I saw the way it moved. It wasn't normal. It didn't run like a dog or even like a person. It glided, almost, and it left no trace. No prints. No sound after it disappeared. The weirdest part? Max kept pacing the sidewalk for hours afterward, sniffing, checking the same spot over and over again. He was alert, different, like something had switched on inside him. And later that night, when everything had calmed down, he sat by the window and wouldn't move. Just stared out into the dark, tail still, eyes locked on the trees across the street. Something was out there, and Max knew it wasn't over. The next morning, things felt off. The neighborhood was quieter than usual. Even the usual joggers and dog walkers seemed to be staying inside. My aunt noticed it too. She kept looking out the kitchen windows, frowning as Max sat stiffly by the front door like a soldier on duty. Normally, he'd be begging for breakfast scraps, but not today. He was alert, ears twitching at every small sound outside. It was like he was waiting for something to return. Later that day, I ran into Mr. Patel, who lived 2 houses down. He looked tired, like he hadn't slept. When I asked how he was, he hesitated before speaking. "Something weird happened last night," he said. My motion lights kept going on, but when I checked, there was nothing there. Not even footprints in the grass. He tried to laugh it off, but I could see he was rattled. He wasn't the only one. Mrs. Dawson's cat had gone missing, and another neighbor said their garbage bins had been knocked over but nothing was taken. It was like something had been lurking, testing boundaries. Meanwhile, Max refused to go into the backyard. Every time we tried to take him out there, he'd pull against the leash, low growl in his throat, eyes fixed on the woods behind the house. That was the part that got to me. Max, who used to chase butterflies and bark at falling leaves, now stood frozen, tail tucked, like he knew something dangerous was near. My aunt started sleeping with the porch light on, and she kept checking the locks more than usual. And the little girl from yesterday, her parents hadn't let her outside since. She'd drawn a picture that they taped to the fridge. It was of a dark shape with glowing eyes. She called it the Watcher. By the third night, no one on the street was sleeping well. Porch lights flicked on and off through the night, and every little noise had people peeking through blinds. Max hadn't left the front door in hours. He barely blinked. My aunt tried to coax him away with treats, but he wouldn't budge. It was like he knew whatever had come that day wasn't done yet. Around midnight, the power flickered. Not just in my aunt's house, but all down the block. I saw lights blink out from window to window, then come back, then go out again. It was dead quiet. No cars, no wind. Just that heavy silence that makes your skin crawl. I looked at Max, and he was already growling, low and steady, like a warning drum. Then came the sound. A soft scraping, like claws on wood. It wasn't loud, but it carried in the stillness. It was coming from the backyard. My aunt grabbed her phone and turned on the flashlight, but the beam barely cut through the darkness outside. We didn't want to go out, but we couldn't just sit there either. I slowly moved to the back door, heart thudding so hard I could hear it in my ears. Max was right beside me, shoulders tense, nose pressed to the glass. I flipped the switch for the porch light. It clicked, but nothing happened. Still dark. Then something moved at the edge of the yard. Not fast this time. It was slow, intentional. A dark shape stepped just enough into the light from the street that I could see it had eyes. Not glowing like in movies or worse. Reflecting, like a predator. It didn't run. It stood there, and Max growled deeper than I've ever heard. Then, he lunged. The door flew open with a crash as Max tore into the backyard, a blur of fear and fury. I shouted his name, but he didn't stop. My flashlight barely lit the yard, just enough to catch the shape disappearing into the woods with Max close behind. It was gone in seconds. Silence followed, deep and thick, except for the frantic sound of my breathing. My aunt gripped my arm, eyes wide, whispering, "What was that?" I couldn't answer. I didn't know. We grabbed our coats and a stronger flashlight and went after him, the cold air biting at our faces. The trees were close together, making it hard to move fast. Branches scraped our shoulders and legs, and every shadow looked like it was hiding something. I kept calling for Max, but the forest just echoed back at us. Then we heard a bark, sharp and panicked, followed by a yelp that made my stomach drop. We found him near a shallow creek, standing over something half buried in mud. His fur was bristled, teeth bared, but not at us. He was growling at the thing on the ground. My aunt gasped and turned away. At first, I thought it was a dead animal, but then I saw metal as something like a small device, half crushed, blinking weakly with red lights. Max had dug it up. Whatever it was, it didn't belong there. It looked too advanced, like military tech or a tracking unit. It gave off a soft, high-pitched hum that made Max wince. Then came the real twist. Behind us, deeper in the woods, flashlights blinked on. Several. They moved fast, no voices, just beams of light cutting through the trees. Whoever they weren't neighbors. No one dressed like that around here. Black jackets, quiet boots, radios crackling. I pulled my aunt behind a tree as Max growled again, this time low and scared. One of the men picked up the device, examined it, then said into his radio, "It's been found." "We're not alone." We stayed hidden, afraid to move. The men didn't search. They didn't need to. They walked back into the woods like they knew exactly where to go. And just like that, they vanished, leaving us with more questions than answers. Max whimpered, then looked up at me. His eyes said it all. Whatever we'd stumbled into wasn't over. It was just beginning. We didn't talk much on the way back to the house. Max stayed close, walking slower than usual, his eyes constantly scanning the trees behind us. My aunt gripped my hand the whole time, like if she let go, we might both vanish too. Back at the house, we locked every door and window. The device was gone, taken by those men. But the way they moved, the way they appeared out of nowhere, it stuck with me. It wasn't normal. None of it was. The next day, things started to feel different. The neighborhood buzzed with quiet tension. The power stayed on, but our phones were acting weird and messages didn't send, GPS glitched, and calls dropped after a few seconds. Max was still on edge, but now he wasn't watching the woods. He was watching the sky. Around sunset, my aunt called me to the window. "Look," she said quietly. I followed her gaze and saw three black SUVs parked down the street. Same kind of vehicles the men in the woods would drive. A group of them stood near the cars, talking, pointing toward our house. That's when the doorbell rang. I opened it slowly, heart pounding. A man in a clean suit stood there, calm and polite. No badge, just a quiet smile. "We'd like to ask a few questions about your dog," he said. His voice was friendly, but there was something cold behind it. Max stepped forward then, growling deep. The man froze. "You don't understand," he said softly. He made contact. That's when I noticed the marker behind Max's ear, almost hidden under the fur. A small, silvery shape, like a scar but too perfect. The man saw me notice it and nodded. They chose him. Suddenly, a high-pitched frequency filled the air. Max yelped and staggered back. The man touched something in his pocket, but before he could react, Max jumped, knocking him down and darting outside. We chased after him, but by the time we reached the end of the street, Max was gone. 2 days passed. No word, no sightings. The SUVs vanished. Then, just as suddenly, Max returned. Calm, normal. But when I looked into his eyes, I knew why he wasn't the same. He was still Max, a broken bar, but something else had come back with him. Something watching through him. We tried to go back to normal after Max returned, but normal didn't feel the same anymore. He acted like his old self, eating, napping, chasing the occasional squirrel, but there was something deeper in his eyes now, like he understood things we couldn't. My aunt said it was just the stress from what he'd been through, but I knew better. Every so often, I'd catch him staring into space, ears perked, like he was listening to something far away. And he never barked at the woods again. Not once. The strange vehicles never came back. The men in black suits were gone like they'd never existed. The power stayed steady, phones worked fine, and the neighborhood settled into its usual routines. But people were changed. More cautious. Neighbors talked a little less loudly, locked their doors a little earlier. The little girl Emilia, we saw her outside again a week later, riding her bike under close watch. Her parents smiled when they saw Max, but they didn't get too close. I think deep down, they felt the same thing I did, that Max had seen something none of us would ever understand. One night, I sat with him on the porch, just like we used to. The sky was clear, stars brighter than I'd ever seen. I asked him, jokingly, "Where did you go, boy?" He didn't look at me, just stared up, quiet, like he was remembering. That's when I noticed it again, the mark behind his ear. It was fainter now, but still there, like it didn't want to be forgotten. A few weeks later, We took him to the vet for a regular checkup. The vet scanned him like usual, then frowned. "That's odd," she said. "There's some kind of signal coming off him. Low frequency." "Harmless, but I've never seen that before." She smiled nervously and changed the subject. We didn't press it. In the end, we never got all the answers. Whatever Max had found or whatever had found Hema was bigger than us. But somehow, I think he was chosen for a reason. Not because he was special in the usual way, but because he cared. He protected. He didn't run when it mattered. That was enough. Now, when people ask why my aunt's dog is so famous, I just smile and say, you had to be there. Because even if the world never knows what really happened at a broken bar, we do. And Max? He still watches the sky.